Now I'm going to turn it over to Frank, who is going to talk to you about polishing your resume.
Thanks, Angela. And as Angela just mentioned, we're going to be talking about polishing your resume. And when we talk about putting together your resume, there's actually 2 rules that you need to keep in mind before you really get started, and also to really keep in mind as you're putting your resumes together. Rule number 1 is you need to customize that resume. The purpose of a resume is to get the job interview. So it's going to be important for employers to know as to how you can meet their needs. So it's going to be worth your time to take the time to really tailor that resume and cover letter and show how you meet the needs that they have. Another thing that you should keep in mind too as you're customizing is employers don't have a lot of time as they're looking at resumes. On average, they have roughly around 60 seconds per resume. So it's going to be important for you, actually critical, that you get all that information in the right areas of your resume and to get them aligned right. Kind of think of your resume as a living document. And you really should, when you think of a living document, you really should look at it that you should be trying to tailor that resume for each position that you're applying for. Create content that sells. Don't just talk about what you did, but how did you excel at it? Talking about things like your education and your work experience. And then finally, you should strategically place your information on your resume. So again, looking at, where should you put your education? Where should you put your work experience? So for example, maybe you're a recent grad. And as a recent grad, one of the big sells about you is going to be your education. So you really should put your education towards the beginning of the resume so that employer sees it right away. Versus if you've been out in the work world for a while, at least 5-6 years, your education may not be as important to put at the very beginning of the resume, and you may want to put that towards the end. So again, as you're starting to work on your resume, keep rule number 1, which is customization. The second rule that you need to keep in mind is how can you meet the employer's needs? So you need to keep that resume focused on what value you're going to bring to the employer and their organization. You need to make it your job to really get to know who they are, what they do, where are they headed in the future, who does the hiring there. So keep that focus. And then you also need to keep it concise yet powerful as you put together your resume. And then finally, you need to actively sell yourself. What are your strengths and skills? And you need to focus on these, and you need to show these strengths and skills on your resume. So with these 2 rules in mind, now we can get into your resume. So let's go in, and we have an example here of a chronological resume. And really the first thing you're going to put on your resume, your first section is going to be your contact information. So how can that employer get a hold of you? So if we see here with Mary Market, we see we have her address here. We have her phone number, her email address. You can also put things down, like for example, if you have a profile out on the internet, or if you have a website. So these are the sorts of things that again, you could put the address, and this would go underneath your contact information. The next information that you want to put on your resume would be your objective. So what type of work are you currently looking for? And if we click ahead here and we come to the cover letter, we recommend, instead of putting your objective on the resume, to actually put that on your cover letter. And in particular, in that first paragraph, talk about what type of work it is that you're looking for. How did you find out about the position? And why do you want to work for that employer? And then you could take it from there and then actually go into the second and third paragraphs and then put a focus on the skills that you have and how that's going to benefit the employer. So put that objective in your cover letter. Other sections that you could put in your resume, you might want to put in a section like, say, a summary of qualifications or a summary of skills, or maybe you want to put down your computer skills. And this is really a chance for you to focus on some of your accomplishments, some of the skills, maybe some of the responsibilities that you want to point out to the employer. Could be things that maybe won't be shown in your previous work experience. Or there's some specific things that you want to point out. For example, maybe some computer skills. If you do put a summary of qualifications or computer skills, I would recommend that you would put that towards the beginning of the resume again so that employer can see that right away. Another section that you could put in your resume is your education. And your education would be the name of school that you attended, your major, your minor. If you're a recent grad, you definitely want to put your GPA on there if it's above a 3.0. And you would also want to put down when you graduated with your major. If you've been out in the work world for a while, maybe you went back and continued on with your education and maybe you got a grad degree, you would also want to put that information down too. You would put down your grad information first, and then after that, then you would put down your undergrad information. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're a recent grad, again, you're going to want to put that towards the beginning of the resume, and if you've been on the work world for a while, you'll put that towards the end of the resume. The question here is, when do you take off the date for graduation? I would probably suggest after you start your first position, after you've graduated, but typically probably at least 4 or 5 years after you've completed and graduated from school. Okay. Other sections that you can put on your resume, you can put on a section for work experience. That's the next section that we can talk about. Work experience is a chance for you to put down the name of the organizations that you work for, the job titles, the dates that you work there. You're going to do some bullet points for these positions, and you're going to talk basically about your accomplishments, your responsibilities, and some of your skills. And a little bit later on in this presentation, we'll talk a little more in depth about bullet points. And you can actually divide up your work experience too if you'd like to. So for example, if you have some positions that you've done in the past that are more relevant to the type of work that you're applying for, you can make a section that's called relevant experience. If there's positions you've done that maybe are not necessarily relevant to the position you're applying for, you could call that maybe work experience or other experience. Maybe you're a recent grad and you had a chance to do some internships. In this particular situation, you could do a section called internship experience. And again, you would set it up the same way as you would for relevant or work experience. And also, when you do the work experience, remember to make sure that you put this in reverse chronological order. So basically what that means is starting with the most recent job and then working your way back. Another section you might want to put on your resume, and if you use this section, I definitely would recommend putting this towards the beginning of the resume, is a section for licensure or certification. So for example, maybe you're a school teacher and you need a state license to be able to teach. It's going to be important for you to put that in a section at the very beginning of the resume so that that employer sees it. Another section that you can put in your resume is honors and activities. So honors would be, for example, maybe you're a recent grad and you got a chance to get involved in some different organizations on campus. So you could put that in a section. Or, and again, this may be this could be if you're a recent grad or if you've been out in the work world for a while, you could, for activities, you could put down maybe some sort of organizations you got involved in. So for example, maybe you did some volunteer work for the JCs or the Boys and Girls Club. You could put that in there. And then for, and that would be for activities. And then honors, I think I just mentioned about the, if you're a recent grad, you could put down things like honor rolls and dean's lists, but you could also put down any sorts of awards that maybe you've received from previous employers. There's also a couple other sections that you can do, but you may not necessarily use. They're not as common, but they may be useful for you depending on your situation. You could do a section, for example, if you're a recent grad and maybe there's some specific classes that you think are relevant to the work that you're applying for, you could put some of these classes down. Or maybe you're applying for work that's going to require for you to do some sort of scientific research or some sort of lab or some lab experience, and you could do a section showing that also. So let's go back here, and I want to just show you, let's go back to that resume that we looked at earlier, that Mary Marquette. And again, you can see some of the sections that I just talked about here in this resume. Again, you can see the education, and with the education, you have the information that I explained, the name of the school. Mary, in her case, she got a bachelor's of business administration, her GPA, her major, minor. Actually, she looks like she just had 2 majors, and she actually put down some classes that she felt was relevant. And then she got into some of her computer skills. And you can see here farther down, this is where she then split up her experience. So here's that relevant experience I was talking about. And then down here is the additional experience, not necessarily related to the position that she's applying for, but she wanted to get down here that she had worked here during this period of time. And at the very bottom is some of the activities that she was involved in. So she looks like she worked here as a volunteer for the Habitat for Humanity, and also worked as a treasurer for the marketing club and on the UW Oshkosh campus. So those are the sections of your resume. And let's go forward here. And let's talk now a little bit about putting together bullet points. And there's really a few things that you have to understand about bullet points. And one of the first things you got to realize about bullet points is that they're not complete sentences. They're just quick points. And as you do each bullet point, you got to make sure that they're either done in past or present tense. So they're in present tense if you're currently there, but they're in present tense if you're no longer working there. Each bullet point should start with a power verb. And as you put all this information down, you got to make sure that you're highlighting experiences and accomplishments in these different positions. So for example, when we're talking about responsibilities, we're just talking about everyday sorts of duties that you did. So for example, maybe you worked as a supervisor. As a supervisor, you should write down in bullet points some of the different duties and some of the different things that you did. You should also put down some of your accomplishments, and accomplishments would be ways in which you met or exceeded your goals that were set for you by previous employers. And also, let's just say, for example, maybe you worked with some customers too. Again, how did you meet or exceed some of those customers, some of those customers' needs? So getting that information down is going to be very important. You need to also create vivid images for the reader too. So for example, you could say, let's just say for example you're in marketing, you could say something like, maybe you wrote some press releases, and you could say something like that, wrote press releases, and that would be perfectly fine. But you can actually quantify that and give the employer a little more information and maybe give the employer some numbers. So for example, you could say something like wrote 15 press releases and gave that out to 25 different media organizations, which resulted in maybe 1,000 individuals attending an event. So that gives employers a little more information. So always kind of keep that in the back of your mind too as you put together your bullet points is quantify it. Give the employer some numbers, give them some percentages. Try to tell the employer, give them some scenarios as to maybe what happened in the beginning and what was the end result. You should also try to identify and solve employers' hidden needs. As I talked earlier about, You need to really become an expert on what it is that the employer is looking for, and really what are they trying to fill. And there's some ways you can do this. One way is definitely trying to mimic the job description. But you can also maybe visit their website if they have one, maybe do some networking. Maybe there's someone maybe, for example, that works there. But really trying to get the information that you need. And this is going to be important because you really want, and again, because of the competition, you really want that resume to stand out from all the other candidates who are applying for the position. You also need to sell the benefits of your skills and strengths. What are your skills and strengths? Now, if you're not really comfortable with this, or you're not really sure as to what your skills and strengths are, I would really encourage you to use a program called Strengths Quest. And I'll be giving you actually the link to this at the end of this presentation. And you can go online and take an assessment and learn a little more about your skills and strengths. And then finally, always keep in mind as you're putting together your bullet points is demonstrate by example. So give lots of examples. Now, if you get stuck, there is a technique out there that I would recommend, and it's called the STAR technique. It's actually a technique that is suggested for when you do behavioral interviewing. But it's also a good technique to use in your development of your resume. And the STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. And always keep in mind as you're trying to give these examples to the employer, try to set the stage for them. What did you need to do in that particular situation? How did you complete the task? And then finally, what was the outcome or the result? So let's now talk a little bit about some of the different types of formats of resumes. And there are actually three types of formats out there. There's the chronological, there's the functional, and then there's also the combination resume. The chronological resume is actually the most widely used of the three formats. And it's a reverse chronological history of your work experience. Employers tend to like it because usually what they find is the job seeker tends to put most of the relevant information towards the beginning of the resume, and it's easier for them to find. It's also a great format to use, especially if you're applying for work that's relevant to the type of work that you've been doing in the past. So you can show a real strength there. The next format is the functional format. And this is a little different approach. This really takes the focus away from the work experience and puts the focus, and you actually have the control over this, on the skills and strengths that you want to share with that employer. So you're doing a lot more of mimicking the actual job description and trying to share the skills and strengths that you currently have, but you may not necessarily be able to show in jobs that you've done in the past. This tends to be a good format to use for individuals, either, for example, maybe you don't have a very good work history, or maybe you're thinking about starting a new career, and so you want to show some of those skills and strengths. But those would be some different ways. Oh, another way too could be if you've been on the work world for a while, and again, the functional format could be the perfect resume for you. And then finally, we have the combination resume, and the combination resume really takes both of these formats and takes the best of both of them and combines them. So it really puts the focus on the work history and also on your skills and strengths. So let's take a look at some examples here of these three types of formats. Let's go back to Mary Market here. And Mary Market is an example of a chronological resume. And if you go down in the resume, you'll see again where the relevant experience is and the additional experience. And you can really see that's really the main focus of the resume. And that's a good example of a chronological resume. So let's compare that now to a functional resume. And we'll flip forward here. Here's an example of a functional resume, and you can see right away some of the differences between George's resume and Mary's resume. If we look here at the bottom, you can see really actually the last section that's on this resume is the professional experience. So with a chronological resume, that was towards the middle, towards the top, and actually that becomes, that is actually placed towards the end of the resume. And you'll also notice that there's no bullet points. And so really what George is putting down is just the name of the organization, the job title, and the years that he worked there. And if you look towards the top of the resume, and that's where you can see where the focus really becomes for the position, the professional profile and also the skills and abilities. And we see here George is, first of all, in the professional profile, he's highlighting some of his accomplishments and skills here. These are some things that he wants that employer to see about him. And then from there he goes into some of his skills and abilities. And what he's trying to do is he's just trying to mimic again that job description and point out some of the different things that he has. So in his case, he's pointing out things like human relations and communications skills. He's talking about some of his community service coordination skills. So he's trying to get that out to the employer. So let's take a look now at the combination resume. And the combination resume is really, as I mentioned before, it's taking both of the strengths. So it's really looking again at some of the skills and strengths, but also looking at some of the professional experience too. And again, you can see that is at the very beginning of the resume. And now, now this one's a little bit different though, and this is actually a type of format we recommend, especially for alumni who have been out in the work world for a while. Again, if you're looking at maybe putting your education more towards the bottom of the resume, and you can see it's more towards the bottom here. And again, it kind of puts the focus more on that relevant experience in your career at this time. So those are the three different formats. So let's just briefly talk about some of the different ways that we're seeing individuals submit applications and not applications, I'm sorry, resumes and cover letters. And one of the first ways we're seeing individuals submit resumes and cover letters is just as it says there, print version. So individuals are making copies of it and they're mailing it to the employer that they're applying for that particular position. Another way that we're seeing the job seekers submit resumes is by creating a PDF document. And a PDF document can be sent through an email as an attachment. And there's a couple reasons why people tend to like the PDF document. One reason is that it's locked, so you don't have to worry about anyone tampering with it or making changes to your resume without your knowledge. And secondly, you don't have to worry about the employer having Microsoft Word. It's a program that can be opened by any PC program that's out there. Another way that we're seeing the job seeker send out resumes is they're trying to make resumes more scannable friendly. One of the things that we are seeing now more with employers is they have programs where as they get these resumes, they scan them into these programs, and it just makes it easier for them to be able to pass out resumes versus making lots of copies and using lots of paper. So one of the things you might want to try and do as you send out your resume, especially if you think it's going to be scanned into a program, is to make it more scanner friendly. So some of the things that you're going to be doing is taking out things like italics and bolding highlights and doing your font in Times Roman. And again, that makes your resume a little more reader friendly after it's been scanned in. And then finally, another way that we see individuals submitting resumes is by saving it as a text document. There are getting to be more employers out there that have some sort of an application process online where you actually physically have to copy and then paste your resume into an online application program. And the best way we would say to save your resume and to submit it would be saving your resume as a text document. It just makes that resume a little bit easier for the employer to read. And what it does is it takes out some of the things in the resume that really makes it more pretty. So it's taking out things like bolding and bullet points, different size, taking out italics, different size fonts. So that concludes my presentation. If you'd like to make an appointment with me to talk further about your resume or your cover letter, or maybe just talk about your job search in general, or maybe you would like to do some career advising, you can see my phone number and email address there, so feel free to call or email me to set up an appointment. And then I also have here some of the links I was telling you about earlier. The first link we have here is a link for career services. This is our main web page, so feel free to click on this and go in later. And we do have a lot of good information on there if you want to get more examples of resumes and cover letters. Maybe you need more power verbs, or you want to get an example of how to put together a resource, not a resource, but a reference sheet. You'll find that all on our website. We also have a link here for Titan Jobs. And this is our program where employers go online and post jobs. So if you'd like to find out which employers are coming to our campus to recruit, we also have on Titan Jobs a really nice resource library. So a lot of good information that could be helpful for you in your job search. So follow this link through to learn more about Titan Jobs and how to sign up. Here is the link here for Strengths Quest that I mentioned. So again, if you're not really sure about your skills and your strengths, but you'd like to learn more about it, you can visit this site and you can take that assessment. And then finally, we have a link here for LinkedIn. And this is a social networking program. It's a lot like Facebook, but it's professional. And if you'd like to learn more about how to use this program to do some networking and how to sign up, you can click on this link here and follow that through to learn more. We also have some more webinars coming up, and this is our list of the 2011-2012 webinar series coming up. Starting here in September, we're going to have a webinar on Titan Jobs, how to use it and what it's all about. In January, we're going to be inviting some of our employers, HR people that we work with, to come, and they're going to be on a panel, and you'll get a chance to ask more questions about the job search. And then finally in April, we're going to have a webinar, and it's going to be covering LinkedIn, and in particular, our Groups and Mentor Networking program, which is run through our Alumni Association, and you can come and learn more about how to join that and what that's all about. And then finally here, we've got some information here. Every semester, we have career fairs, and our next career fair is going to be September 27th, 1 to 5, and it's going to be at Colf. And usually at these career fairs, we usually have between 100 to 150 employers who attend. At the moment, we have roughly about 82 employers who have signed up already. On that website that I showed you earlier, that link to our Career Services webpage, there is a link on there for our career fair. And as we get closer to the career fair, we'll have listed online the companies who will be attending and the positions that they'll be filling. So if you'd like to learn more about that, definitely keep your eyes on that. All right. Is there any questions?
Yes, Craig.
Yes.
There are a few questions.
Okay.
The first one.
Oh, sure. Okay. The next question was about gaps in resumes. And when I was talking earlier about the different types of formats, the functional format is probably the best way to address when you're talking about gaps in resumes. Because again, that's where you can go in and you can really focus on some of the skills and the strengths that you currently have. So you can do something like a summary of highlights or summary of skills at the very beginning, versus putting that focus on that work experience. Okay.
So the next question we had was from Kezi. You talked earlier about linking your career website or portfolio to your resume. Do you feel that employers might be taking that route eventually and the paper version going to be a thing of the past?
Oh, I think you might have misunderstood me. Actually, what I meant was just to put the address in the contact information. So say, for example, you have your portfolio online, or maybe you have a website. Well, for example, here on our Titan Jobs program, we have a program called Folio 21, where you can actually put your portfolio online. And again, that might be another reason why you might want to sign up for Titan Jobs if you're not using it currently. But from there, you can actually put your address on your resume. So that would definitely save you on the paper. So you wouldn't necessarily have to print that out. They would just see that address, and then they could visit and read more about you.
And what about job applications where an applicant has to type in everything individually and it doesn't allow you to attach a resume? Should you take the same approach as the chronological resume, or should you include more information than what your resume would state?
It probably really depends on, and it sounds like what you're saying is just an application that you're filling out, but they're not actually asking for a resume itself. It probably really depends on if you feel that you've covered everything that you need for that employer to see whether you meet the needs or not. If not, I probably would add a resume if you can. Chronological, I would probably do the chronological if it's probably more relevant, the work experience is relevant, and you can show what you've done in the past and show that relevance. If not, then I probably would do more of a functional where you can probably focus on skills and strengths.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Any other questions?
I just want to make a comment for alumni. Frank mentioned Titan Jobs accounts a couple of times. And if you are current alumni and you had a Titan Jobs account while you were a student, you should still have access to that Titan Jobs account. If you don't, or you didn't have a Titan Jobs account while you were a student, you can apply for one. There's a one-time fee that's associated with Titan Jobs. I believe it's $25.
$25.
And you can get that application through the homepage of the Career Services website.
Yes. And then just to add to that, then there's actually an address on that application too. So you'll just send that you'll send your application with a check for $25, and then just mail it to that address. And if you run into any trouble, any of our staff at the front desk, and again, that phone number that I gave you, feel free to call, and anyone can assist you with that too.
920-424-2181. All right, thank you very much for joining us. If you have any further questions, please feel free to contact Career Services, and we appreciate your participation.